This podcast is brought to you by Most Valuable Podcasts, leading the league in podcasting entertainment.
Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, children of all ages. This is a Fast Break Podcast. I'm your host, Sean Anderson, and alongside me, as always, is Ricky Widmer.
What's up, guys?
And Dave Oster.
Hola, amigos.
And today, we are finishing up our rankings for the 2018-2019 season, and we're going to start off with the talks of Jimmy Butler requesting a trade from Minnesota. Before we jump into all of that, we do want to let you know to check out patreon.com/mostvaluablepodcast. If you want to be on this podcast or any of the Most Valuable Podcasts, check out patreon.com/mostvaluablepodcast and the $10 tier. You get to pick the topic and you get to come on once a month and talk about that topic with your favorite podcast hosts or your favorite podcast people, podcasters, not podcasties, podcasters.
He would be a podcastee, though.
Would you?
Like, the guest would be a podcastee.
Or
Yeah,
wouldn't he be a guest?
He would just be
or
a patron.
wouldn't he or she be a guest?
He would just be a loyal patron.
I think it would be a podcastee, as we are podcastors.
Depends on how...
Stores. Like pastors.
Dave's just got the Spanish thing going.
Anyways, yeah, Dave screams Hispanic. Anyways, let's jump into the Jimmy Butler talk and the Minnesota Timberwolves. If you haven't heard, which I don't know where you've been, on Wednesday there was a meet. Well, hold on, let's backtrack. Last week there was news that Jimmy Butler was going to be meeting with the owners and Tom Thibodeau on Monday. Then Jimmy Butler tweeted out saying, no, it's going to be on Wednesday, fake news. Then it happens on Wednesday, and it comes out that Jimmy Butler has requested a trade from the Minnesota Timberwolves. And then it came out that he gave the Minnesota Timberwolves 3 teams on Wednesday, the Los Angeles Clippers, the Brooklyn Nets, and the New York Knicks. Then on Thursday, I think it was, Thibodeau, the GM of the president of basketball operations, said that they're not going to be trading Jimmy Butler. Mm-hmm. And now the owner, and this is about 22 hours ago, that the front office is telling inquiring rivals that the team has no plans to trade Jimmy Butler. But owner Glenn Taylor has a different message at NBA Board of Governors meeting. Butler is available, and owners/GMs should contact Taylor himself if necessary. So the biggest thing to me is more about the dysfunction in Minnesota before we talk about Jimmy Butler and where he could possibly end up, and especially the 3 teams that he gave us. Let's talk about this Minnesota thing because we just talked about Thibodeau last week. He was in our second part of our coaches. He was in 11 through 20. I had him the lowest at 20. You had him, I think, the highest, and Dave a little bit trailing behind you, but both in the same range. And now it's coming out that Thibodeau does not want to trade Butler, even though he's giving explicit commands that he does want to be traded, and Butler's on a 1-year deal. How do you think this is all playing out in Minnesota? Is this a bad look for Minnesota?
I mean, this is why it's what I told Dave last night when him and I were at dinner. Like, this is why not many coaches, and we've seen it twice in the NBA, cannot handle being the head coach and the GM. There is only one coach in my lifetime that I can even, if you're like, hey, who has done both? The only guy I think of is in the NFL. His name's Bill Belichick. Other than that, Doc Rivers tried it with the Clippers. He's not doing that anymore. They took that away. Someone else is now doing the GM part. They bring in the logo to basically be that guy. Same thing's going to happen with the Timberwolves. It's just we've seen it now twice. No one can do it in the end. Like, I'm not going to say nobody, but Tom Thibodeau should not be president of basketball operations and the head coach.
You're forgetting a big one, and that's Greg Popovich. Popovich has a ton of input on player.
He even tried it, and he didn't succeed at it. I mean, now he's just doing the head coaching thing.
I think his name's not Red Auerbach. I'm trying to R.C. Buford. R.C. Buford is technically the GM, but I think Pop does have an extreme amount of input on what goes on with the player moves. So I think if anyone's doing it, it is Popovich. And before, back like in the early days of the NBA, I know Red Auerbach was a coach and a GM as well. But Dave, what do you think about this whole Minnesota look? Is it bad for Minnesota with the owner saying that we're going to be trading Jimmy Butler and the president of basketball operations saying he's not for sale? How bad of a look is this for
By the way,
Tibbs
it's
in
not
Minnesota?
Auerbacher. It's just Auerbach.
Yeah.
Just toss out there.
He's like 40 years older. Like I think he died 40 years before I was born.
I'm just tossed out there. Like I think
Celtic fans are gonna get mad.
Shout out to the 11 rings.
Yeah, there you go. It's a terrible look. Like it is the most dysfunctional team in the NBA right now. And what I think is more confusing out of it is the fact that they're a team that Thibodeau is trying to like reinstill with toughness and grit and all his old players back. And basically, he's like tanking their future prospects basically by, bringing all these older veterans who, potentially can't contribute as much on the court as, some other free agents might have been able to. He is basically pissing off Jimmy Butler because Jimmy's like, I want to compete. I want to go right now. And nope, the team that you got right now is just not there. So I think it's just a catastrophe waiting to happen because Jimmy obviously is angry at the lack of effort on that team, and bringing in other guys isn't going to change the opinions of two 20-something-year-old kids who just they are who they are at this point in their lives. Like, I don't see them flipping a switch and suddenly being locked in and engaged. They're having fun. They're being kids. They're playing Fortnite. They're doing whatever,
But you sound like an old man when you're saying they're playing Fortnite. But I mean, you're right in the ways because Wiggins already does have his big contract. He got that 5-year, $140 million deal
on a promise to perform better.
And Cat's going to get that deal at some point because he's probably the best offensive center, if not Nikola Jokic. It's probably Karl-Anthony Towns. He's a monster offensively. Obviously, his defense is lacking, and he didn't show up in the playoffs last year. That's a big concern. But you look at those kids, and those are the future stars for Minnesota, no matter what. Because Jimmy Butler, although he's the best player currently on this team and was last year for this team, he is on that expiring deal, and he's 29 years old.
Yeah,
he doesn't
he's in
have
his prime.
He doesn't have the youth that Karl-Anthony Towns and Wiggins do, and also not the long-term control that the Timberwolves do have over Cat and Andrew Wiggins. Now, I know people think that Wiggins has the worst contract in the NBA. It probably goes to Chandler Parsons in my mind, or Joakim Noah, but Wiggins is a bad contract for at least players that young. And the biggest thing that this screams to me, at least, is that Thibodeau not only doesn't know how to do his job, but it's just such a bad hire in the first place, and you saw it after year one without Jimmy Butler that this was just the wrong fit, because you hear about Tom Thibodeau coming in. He's the defensive genius. He did so great in Chicago. He took the year off. Now he's going to come back. He's going to revitalize Minnesota. They're going to take them back to the playoff, and it's going to be a team that's going to be, the spooky Timberwolves.
Is this just a soundbite of Sean from a couple years ago? Because I swear to God, I've heard this before.
I also said Timberwolves, and I think
Timberwolves.
No, I don't know which one I said. And I don't know if I said it right or wrong.
Doesn't matter.
They were the
right.
Wolves at that time. Still, we'll give them that credit.
But the thing is they were supposed to be the next great team.
Yeah.
Right.
And we look at them, and they're just in complete disarray. I said it last year that Thibodeau is the wrong fit and probably should be fired. Now I'm just confirming my hot take last year that was the right call. Thibodeau doesn't know what he's doing on the floor. He's not meshing well with the future stars in Karl-Anthony Towns and Andrew Wiggins, and it's shown by the lack of faith that the ownership has in Tom Thibodeau, and it's pretty clear what they're doing is they don't think Tom Thibodeau is going to be there in the long term. So why should he control our future? Why should he control our assets? You're going to come talk to the owner, and I will make the deals with you, because that's how things are going to go, because I'm going to be here for a long time. I'm going to take this team past the Tom Thibodeau era. Tom Thibodeau is on a clock, and it just wonders how much time is left on that, because we might see the first 30 games, Minnesota might not perform well with or without Jimmy Butler, and Thibodeau gets canned.
I don't think he gets canned mid-season, but the one thing I do think is that this year he could be ripped of president of basketball operations. Because it's funny that the thing I ended our second coaching segment with was what I think the problem with the Timberwolves is that if you look at their GM, it's like he's a GM, but he's an advisor to Tom Thibodeau. That's your problem. You need a guy who's going to be a GM who's actually a GM. Like, the owner shouldn't be the one making the calls. It should be, all right, I have appointed this GM to do that job. Yeah, he works with the coach to get the players, obviously, that the coach wants, kind of like how you said Pop and Auerbach work together. But you should have someone separate from the guy who's the coach, because not everyone's able to just turn off their emotions when making decision as the GM that they would have their emotions on if they made those decisions as coach.
Here's the one thing that I do want to bring up, though, because you said he's not going to be fired as coach. Or he's going to be removed
during the season.
All right, but he'll be removed from his job as president of basketball operations. The thing with that is the one guy that you did bring up was Doc Rivers. He did get removed, and I think he's technically stepped down from his job as president of basketball operations. That was after the 2017 season. But he was still extremely successful in LA and was successful last year. I know it was one of their worst. I think it was his worst year in LA. But also, that was a much worse team. You didn't have
with all the circumstances
Blake Paul,
going around them.
Blake Paul. You didn't have Blake Griffin, Chris Paul, and DeAndre Jordan, and this team was still above 500.
Right.
Doc Rivers was still doing his job on the court. I think he just got too much to handle doing everything for the Los Angeles Clippers. I think it's much smarter to put Doc in that role. I just have not seen anything out of Thibodeau that he should be keeping his job in Minnesota.
No, I completely agree with you on that. It's almost like, they're complete polar opposites as far as the talent that he has on the team currently and his game plan and how he wants to win games. I don't understand how you can have such a clash and expect to have consistent results. And what we're seeing right now is, winning through pure talent. Like, they're not better than other teams are as a basketball team, but they've got incredibly talented players like Jimmy Butler, like Cat, like Wiggins, who are able to go out there and win games because it's just like you said, Cat is an offensive monster. Like, there's just some things that he can do that are unprecedented. Wiggins, while inefficient, is still a decent scorer on the wing and can slash pretty much with some of the best of them for his age. So it's impressive. And we know what Butler brings to the table. So those three guys, yes, you're winning games because of them. But at the same time, imagine what you could do with a head coach who knew how to utilize the talent correctly. Like that, I think that's the biggest thing is you're attached to Thibodeau because of his precedent, because of his history as a Celtics coach, as the Bulls coach, and now yours, and you feel good about yourselves for making that great hire because he was one of the hottest names in coaching. And then it's like, well, that whole defense, and we don't do that.
Teams don't win on defense no more.
Playing people for 40 minutes a night, I don't know about that. Jamal Crawford's corpse out there, seems like you get some more shots out of him. There's just so many things that you look at the moves he's made to set this roster up for his version, and I feel like it's one step forward, three steps back. Like, it just at the end of the day, he's made this team worse, and you need to admit it as Minnesota, basketball, whatever you want to call it, like their owner,
a culture,
and move on.
Yeah,
I think you need to move on.
And
period.
My thing too is they haven't bought into his his ideas. They haven't bought into his culture, and the only player that did was Jimmy Butler. Now Butler wants out.
He was already in before. That's the problem.
Yeah, and I don't think it's really anything that Butler dislikes Minnesota or he dislikes Thibodeau. I just don't think he believes long term that Thibodeau will be there. I also don't think that he is going to be seen as the star. And I think that's what this all boils down to. Is
so
that
you
Jimmy
don't
Butler
see this
wants
as
to be
him
the star.
hating Thibodeau. It's, hey, I see the writing on the wall. I'm going to get out now before shit hits the fan.
I don't think he's in love with Karl-Anthony Towns. I don't think he's in love with Wiggins. And I think that he sees that most likely his guy, the guy that he at least probably likes in Thibodeau. I don't think he dislikes Thibodeau. I don't think we're hearing that come out.
No.
His guy in Thibodeau is most likely going to be on the way out. And then also, I think Jimmy Butler has a fondness and a keenness to be the star somewhere. And that's why when we talk about the teams, it's going to become more apparent. The guys that are the stars are the guys that were the number one picks. It's Andrew Wiggins, who has a 5-year, $140 million contract, and it's Karl-Anthony Towns, who's one of the best young players in the league. Those are the guys they're putting money into. Butler, although he was the best player on the team last year, he wants to be away from that. He wants to be on his own team, and he wants to be the star, and he wants to get the credit for it.
And I'm glad you brought that up because that's one thing that I completely agree with. The Herd brought up that same point where you see these guys where it's like, I want to be the guy. We saw it from Kyrie. And most of the time you look at it and you go, yeah, but that's not how you win in today's NBA. Usually in today's NBA, you see, like, for example, LeBron, I'm going to come back to Cleveland. I can't do it all on my own. Hey, I don't like this young kid that you just drafted. Let's trade him so I can get a proven veteran in Kevin Love.
Yeah.
Or like the Warriors. Oh, we just lost to the Cavaliers. Steph Curry. I'm going to recruit the second best player in the NBA, even if that means I take a little less in scoring. I don't win finals MVP, but we win the finals at the end of the year. Like, that's how you win. So, like, I hear that, like, the Jimmy Butler, I want to be the guy. And my whole thought process is like, you're never going to win if it's I'm the guy. It's what other players am I going to play with? Like the stories we hear already about LeBron recruiting Kevin Durant to LA. It's like you're in the sense of recruiting. It's why D Rose, I think, not just his knees, why he failed in Chicago, because he was always the guy where it was like, hey, D Rose, we got Melo in town. You gonna? Nope, not my job to recruit. It's like, yeah, it kind of is your job to recruit.
D Rose is also young, so I'll give him a little bit of a pass there.
And he was always super quiet person.
Yeah.
So.
And the one thing that I want to do with Butler is not misrepresent him, because he has said that he does want to win. So I don't think it's all...
the one thing he does.
Yeah, I don't think it's all about, being the star, but I think when you see the teams that do come out, the Clippers, the Nets, and the Knicks, they're very absent of a star. And some people bring up the fact that...
And they have cap room.
And they have
add
cap room
someone else.
to get a max. And I think some people bring up the fact that the Knicks do have Kristaps. I think with Kristaps' injury history, if Jimmy comes in and he plays 82 games and Kristaps is still in and out of the lineup, especially after this year, I think that's something that will at least have the ability of Jimmy being able to take over. And maybe he does like Kristaps' game, but I think a big part of Jimmy's moves and Jimmy's wanting to get out is that he doesn't think he will be the guy in Minnesota, and because Karl-Anthony Towns will be. I think he wants to be the guy somewhere. Brooklyn doesn't have that. Clippers don't have that right now. I think that you could probably argue that Jimmy Butler would be the guy right away to come in over Kristaps, even though Kristaps is immensely talented. I think with Jimmy's track record, Jimmy's ability to put up both offensively and defensively, he would take over as the star for that Knicks team. I think that's the biggest thing that jumps out to me with those three teams that he threw out there. Not only the cap space, but also the lack of a star already.
Well, we're already seeing, look at what Kyrie. Kyrie was like in Cleveland, I want to be the guy. They trade him to the Celtics. Now already we're talking about, and I'm on the boat of Kyrie to New York after the season because he's not even seen as he's the best player on that team, but in a few years, he's not going to be the guy on that team. It's going to be like J-Tay.
But I don't know about that because, again,
Kyrie's
still extremely young.
But the young talent is rising to where sooner rather than later, they're going to surpass.
I don't know if it's talent. For him, it's injuries. Like, that's the only reason Kyrie would not be the guy on that team. I'm sorry. He's one of the most talented finishers. He's one of the best shooters. Like, I don't think anyone on that team has a higher top end than what he is.
My thing, though, is I don't think there could even be a guy on
the
Boston.
Celtics.
With the way that
Brad
team
Stevens.
works, I don't think, not even just Brad Stevens, but I just don't think that there will ever be a guy. Now, will people say Kyrie's the MVP of this team? I think that's for sure certain could happen, and that's what they were saying when you're on that great run before he got injured. But I don't think that that team really placates to a star. And the only reason why Paul Pierce was the guy back when they won championships in 2007 was because he was there for so long and he built up and he was on the bad teams and they finally got help around him. I think just the way that Boston works, unless you're a clear cut above everybody else, like Larry Bird was, like Bill Russell was, like Paul Pierce was, it's tough to build stardom out of there because they're usually so talented, and they're so talented that I think it's tough for Kyrie to separate himself. So outside of the injury thing, I just don't think Boston is the right place to find himself as the star. And also, although he wanted to be traded, I think there wasn't a lot of rumors that he wanted to go to Boston. I think he's fine that he went to Boston.
He just wanted to go anywhere.
But I think the talks were, Phoenix was out
He was
there,
looking
New York was out there.
I think the IT thing was never, like, he didn't know that it would be, a straight up 1-for-1 kind of a deal.
Yeah, that's true.
I know there's other pieces in the package, but that was basically it. He knew IT was the guy in Boston, so why would I ask to be traded there? I don't know. I see the reasoning behind Jimmy wanting to go to these teams. And I see it straightforward as like you said, it's pairing with another really talented player, whether it's a max contract or not. Like, that's what he wants the option of, is if I go somewhere, I want to have everything around me be built around me. And I think it's a little selfish, but at the same time, I sort of respect him for it because what he went into was he basically picked up Derrick Rose's mantle in Chicago and continued to play well, and that team was a continual playoff group. But obviously, like, we hit our cap. We knew we weren't going to get any further. And then he goes to Minnesota. He's like, all right, I'm the guy in my prime. I'm the guy this team should work around. And we've got these two kids in here who are supposed to be my 2 and my 3. And instead, they're goofing off. They're not giving a shit. And they're not putting in the same level of effort that I am or that I feel I am versus them. So he wants to go somewhere else and kind of dictate his own terms.
Someone who's going to build around him.
I want to be the guy, but I want to bring in somebody else who's on my caliber.
Yeah.
And I think that's why, for me, it just leans heavy Clipper.
I mean, not everybody is like the LeBron James situation of like, I'm coming to a team. Oh, by the way, you just drafted this guy. I get you did that, but we're going to trade him for the guy I want.
But I don't think that, again, I mean, was Andrew Wiggins going to help them win a championship?
No, but the reason why he was included in that deal was because LeBron didn't want to mentor somebody.
Well, no. Who else were they going to trade?
Nobody else was valuable enough to get fat Kevin Love.
But also, it's
We're going to trade Anthony Bennett.
But also, why even make the trade if the Cavaliers could have said, no, we drafted this guy, we can develop him. They did it so that because LeBron came in wanting a veteran to play with them because he knew that would be better than trying to mentor a younger kid at that time.
I someone who can contribute at a high level.
I think it was just more.
All-star.
Yeah, I think it was just more the fact that again we saw what happened with LeBron before in Cleveland, and he didn't have enough help around him.
And his goal was to win a title.
Kyrie was developed enough, and Kevin Love was killing it in Minnesota. He was on the block. I think it just made more sense. I don't think it was anything about mentoring. I think it was just the fact that they were in win now mode. Kevin Love helped them win more instead of mentoring. I don't think that was really it because we see him now in LA. He's mentoring kids. Yeah, pretty much. That's what he's.
But it's a different like when he came to Cleveland. It was all right. I got to win a title for my city. Now it's post championship legacy, whatever you want to call it.
Back to Jimmy Butler. I don't want to paint the wrong way. I know you mentioned the Clippers, and we're going to get right into that after I say this point. I don't want to again. Go back and forth and be seen as a flip-flopper because I was extremely annoyed with Jimmy Butler. Yeah. And I bashed Jimmy Butler before when he was
not a number one, Sean.
I don't think he is. That's not what we're talking about. I think with Jimmy Butler though, one thing that he has done is that he's stayed extremely strong on the floor. He's consistently produced, and he is a guy that does have a very strong attitude, and I don't think it's been extremely negative. It hasn't hurt his teams necessarily because the past two teams he's been on have made the playoffs. And I think that's a plus for him. Yeah. I think it's not exactly the correct way I like it, to be done, pushing yourself out of Chicago and not being a part of that team and separating yourself with Dwayne Wade. Right. And then also with Minnesota, requesting a trade. I don't love it, but I do respect what he's doing because he does seem like he really knows what he wants. Minnesota wasn't that that place that he wanted to be. He probably thought it was going to be decent because he had his guy Thibodeau, and also he didn't have really control on where he was able to go. Right. Chicago found the best deal in Minnesota. He was traded there. I respect that on this one-year deal. He played out his time in Minnesota. He played out his time in Chicago. He didn't walk away from the game. He was there. He's now making it clear. Maybe should have made it clear a little bit sooner than 27 days before the season started or whatever it is. But something that I do respect is that Jimmy Butler is a guy that works his ass off. He's a guy that produced.
Yeah, you can't
going
knock
to Minnesota,
him for his game.
Yeah, and he's a guy that, again, he didn't, abandon his team. So I'll give a shout out to Jimmy Butler for doing that. Let's talk about where he's going. You said Clippers. Why did you say Clippers?
They have the best opportunity to bring in another star with him. I think that's it's the easiest plan to get him there and land someone like a Kyrie Irving who's been rumored to want to pair up with Jimmy Butler. I think the biggest thing, outside of basketball reasons, it's you're going to LA instead of Minnesota. No offense, Minnesota, but come on, that's not even close. Jimmy lives in LA. That's where his home is, and I think a lot of players are starting to value that more than other things, in basketball. But basketball purely, they've got a lot of talent that's young. They're making the right moves. They have one of the smartest minds in basketball in their front office now. They have a talented kid who I hope they wouldn't have to move in Shai Gilgeous-Alexander in order to bring in Jimmy, because I think that we all love what we saw out of him in Summer League, and I cannot wait to see what he can do in preseason. But no, they've got a lot of really good pieces that either are going to be able to translate into winning now or to be traded off for other pieces of talent. Like the way their contracts are structured right now, they just have a lot of movable assets. So I'm excited to see what that front office can do to make the best moves possible for this team going forward.
The one thing that because I have a different group chat that I'm in where it's a fantasy baseball league, fantasy football, and now it's just like a garbage chat. Yeah. This one kid brought up the fact that the Clippers have the worst assets, and I thought he was. I don't know what's wrong with this kid. Mm-hmm. I think clearly the worst assets out of the Knicks, Nets, and Clippers would probably be the Knicks. Because the best asset would be Kristaps. You're not trading Kristaps. So and then you have Frank, and I don't think you should give up on him that early. And Kevin Knox as well. I think the guys that they drafted and have in place are too good to be traded. And the only one that you could do is Frank. And really, how is that going to help the Timberwolves now?
Because it's basically like trading for a younger Chris Dunn at this point.
And you don't really need a point guard.
I know that comparison's going to cause whatever.
But even then, you really don't need a point guard. Right. You need a guy that's probably going to shoot and play defense, which Frank will do.
Baby.
But yeah, Frank's not a great three-point shooter right now. I think the Knicks probably have the worst assets. I think the Clippers do have the best assets because, again, you have multiple picks from this year. You have Jerome Robinson, you have Shai Gilgeous. I think Shai Gilgeous holds a much more weight in trade talks, even though they were drafted one position behind one another. And then the Nets, they don't have anything that jumps off the table that really wows me, but they do have their picks coming back. But will they be concerned on trading those picks right away?
As well, too. I think they've got Denver's protected pick this year. I mean, it'll be like a 20, but it'll still be. It's another pick they could add to the pot. But that means, guess what? Are you going to trust Thibodeau with drafting the end? Because Justin Patton with foot injuries looking pretty sexy right now.
No, because he's going to be ripped of President Basketball Operation. Someone else.
Again, I don't think he's going to be even with the team next year.
Yeah.
When draft time comes around. But Ricky, who do you think that Jimmy Butler is going to end up playing for, and when do you think he's going to play for him? Is it going to be mid-season? Do you think it's going to be for the start of the season?
I am going to save, in all due respect, I'm going to save my exact who he's going to the very end because
this is the end.
What I think and I didn't know how long we were going to go with
This is
it.
the end.
I tweeted earlier in the week, as soon as Woj tweeted about it, I said the Clippers better get this done before they lose out. They lose Jimmy to the Knicks and they lose Kawhi to the Lakers. To me, the Knicks being, like you said, all their assets, they're not the best. If I'm the Knicks, I'm just sitting back. I'm not making an offer. I'm not losing anything that I have to because basically you're on the mindset of if Jimmy hits free agency, I can sell Kyrie and Jimmy on being in New York and playing with Kristaps. If I'm the Clippers, I'm the Nets. I'm doing whatever I can to get this deal done because for the Nets, it's easy. You get Jimmy here, you're in New York just like the Knicks. If you get Jimmy, you could snipe Kyrie.
They have to literally
away
write
from
off every asset.
Oh no.
Other than Jimmy Butler to
I
do
know.
that
I know.
contract-wise.
I'm not saying it's a good thing, but I'm saying if you want Jimmy, if you get him, there's a good chance you could snipe Kyrie away from the Knicks. But with the Clippers, I think they need to do this because you already know that Kawhi, and there might be some people that are like, Ricky, he's going to have a good year in Toronto, and he's going to want to re-sign in Toronto. If Jimmy Butler gets traded to the Clippers, there's a great chance that they could sign Kawhi in free agency and then have Kawhi's the best two-way player? They could have the best two-way players in
Anthony
the NBA
Davis.
Respectively? Well, Anthony Davis too, but I mean, of wings, Jimmy Butler and Kawhi are the gold standard for two ways.
I mean, KD, LeBron James.
I mean, they're in a different they're in a different tier. They're the best two players.
Playoff LeBron.
They're in the best two players of the year. My point being, they could get Kawhi easily.
I'm sorry, that's so cliche to say.
And I mean, the third team I'd throw in there, I don't see this happening, but I'm looking at the Zach Lowe article of teams it could be.
Yeah.
An interesting third team could be Philly. And the only way that happens is if mid-season they would have to abandon Markelle Fultz and be like, he's not the answer, and do a Fultz Covington and a pick or Fultz Covington and something else to get that, because I look at that. You got Ben Simmons at the point. You got Joel down low. You got Jimmy on either at the 2 or the 3. I like that.
You're giving up Covington and Fultz, though, for 1 year of Jimmy Butler, possibly.
Hey,
I know it's
with the
predicated
chance,
on the fact that he would re-sign. That's why he wants to go to those 3 teams.
And think about it. Ben Simmons and Joel Embiid are young kids that are actually going to have the mindset to work and do what Jimmy, not do what Jimmy wants, but also, they're going to put in the work on the court because Joe and Embiid want to win just as bad as Jimmy
No disrespect to him, but you do realize who Cat was playing in Fortnite, right?
No, I know. But there's a difference where, I think Joe gets it done on the court, though. He's the guy that's I'm going to...
He does. He is one of the most,
He backs his talk up.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And I think there's more fire with Joel Embiid than Cat has shown so far.
Oh, yeah.
I think that's the biggest talk on why Cat's not great defensively is because he doesn't show that effort defensively.
Right.
Joe on the court is scary. And Simmons is a guy that's very laid back. I think that, Butler could shine in that. But again, we're talking you're going to very similar situations.
Mm-hmm.
You have Wiggins, you have Cat. Again, 2 young stars. You're going to Philadelphia. You have Simmons and Embiid, 2 young stars.
Dario.
And Embiid's beloved.
Unless they'd have to include Dario in
They
a
would
deal.
not include Dario and Fultz in the same deal.
Embiid is beloved by Philadelphia, so I think it'd be very tough for Jimmy to make his statement. I think there's 2 teams that he can go to. I think it's the New York Knicks. I think it's the Los Angeles Clippers, because I think the Nets won't have enough to move to bring him in. And also, I don't think they're in the right place to go after him. Just because Jimmy Butler wants to go there, I don't think they're in the right place to go after and bring in Jimmy Butler. Because
unless it's signing him in the offseason.
I don't think they should be bringing on Jimmy Butler or any big player anytime soon. I think they are still in their rebuild. They were absolutely destroyed by Billy King's reign in Brooklyn and in New Jersey. I think they still need to go through this rebuild and finish out. They're almost out of the bad part of it, and they're getting to a team that can be at least competitive and possibly win 30 games in a season. But this is a team that I think still needs to build up this youth, build up this team. They are still very early in the process. If we're looking at the Sixers timeline, they are still very early in on this. They haven't drafted their Embiid yet. They haven't drafted their Simmons yet. They haven't had the ability to. So I think they're very early in their process and haven't been able to at least build a winning culture and a solid foundation enough to bring in a star who's looking to win. So I don't think Brooklyn should be even looking at him. And if they bring him in, I think it's a huge mistake on Brooklyn's behalf.
To answer your question, though,
I didn't ask a question.
No, the one that you said, where is he going to go? Because I didn't give a definitive answer.
Oh.
The Knicks. He's not getting traded this season. He'll sign with the Knicks in the offseason.
So they're not going to trade him.
Thibodeau is going to stand strong, not trade him. That's how he'll lose his job at the end of the year. And then Jimmy will sign with New York with Kyrie.
The whole talk is that the owner will make the deal. Thibodeau is not. What he's going to do is he's going to go over Thibodeau's head, and he's not going to lose out on losing those assets.
At this point, I see it not getting done. Jimmy will sign in the offseason with the Knicks, him and Kyrie next year with Kristaps.
I think it has to be a trade in my mind.
And a top 10 draft pick.
That would be crazy.
I think it has to be a trade in my mind. So the biggest thing is you have to look at the teams that he wants to go and has room. So I think the biggest team that it's got to be is the Clippers, because you look at what they have, you look at their aggressiveness this year. They were looking and trying to pry away, Kawhi from the Spurs. It wasn't able to happen. I know that they're in the Western Conference still, but also you look at Minnesota and should they be afraid of Jimmy Butler and possibly another star? Not really, because your star is only 22 years old. So you still have time to even outlast that Jimmy Butler team in Los Angeles. So I think the deal most likely will be Jimmy Butler and Tobias Harris going over. And I think you probably throw in the rookie, not Shai Gilgeous, but Jerome Robinson, because I think Shai is really loved by that Clipper team. They still went and got Jerome Robinson a pick later, but we saw what Shai did. Shai has got a great mold, a great body. I think they love him out there. I think he'd be fantastic next to Butler as well. Robinson, he kind of gets pushed out by a Jimmy Butler and an all-star. So it'd be Toby, it'd be Jerome Robinson for Jimmy Butler. That's how the contract would end up working. Toby next to Cat and Wiggins, I think would be great because he's a great two-way player, and he could shoot from the outside and make sure that floor is stretched for Wiggins to drive in and attack. Toby isn't also a prima donna. He can work off the ball. He can work with the ball. I think it would be Butler, Tobias Harris, Robinson, possibly picks as well, most likely to make sure.
Right.
But I think that's going to be the deal that's made, and I think it's honestly going to be made in the next couple of weeks because this is a team that needs to get rid of it. I think the owner doesn't want to deal with it. They want to.
He already said Woj came out and said the owner is going to move it. The owner's trading Butler.
But what I'm saying is, I don't think he's going to wait. I don't think this is going to be something that's done mid-season. It's going to be something that's going to be cut off, done, severed with. Jimmy doesn't want to be here. Let's get him out. Let's make sure that we can still make the playoffs because it was 14 years before we made it. Let's not make sure it's another 14 years.
Be honest, without Jimmy, they ain't making the playoffs.
I think it's a 2-week clock.
That's fair, but again, you got to get assets for Jimmy Butler.
I know.
So you can't just have a guy who doesn't
we all
want to
know
be
they
there.
lost the trade as Bulls fans, but it's just a question of can they salvage something out of this?
You know who else knows they lost the trade? Markkanen knows they lost the trade.
He does.
So you're saying Clippers
I am saying Clippers locked in.
before the season?
Within the next 2 weeks.
All right.
I'm going to say Clippers need to get it done, but I'm going to still buy in on what I said.
So no
Kyrie and Jimmy offseason to the Knicks.
But no trade.
No trades.
All right. And I think
No rentals? No nothing. Nobody. Okay.
Unless he goes to the Brooklyn, but they don't have the assets to pull off the deal.
I was in a rental. I don't know. He's saying rental. I don't think
I'm
Brooklyn's
saying
renting.
to a non-listed team.
Oh, unless he gets traded to a Philly or a Miami or something like that.
Everybody would joke around about Miami because they do the body fat club and shit like that. So I love that. I think it was
they have
Jackie Mack,
Portland.
I think.
They have the money in their bad contracts.
Exactly.
To move, but I don't think they have the players.
I mean,
You said Portland?
Maybe, unless Portland wants to get if they want to move Dame, if they want to get Dame and CJ,
You're trying to
third
get
player.
somebody shot by saying move Dame.
No,
you keep pushing that.
Yeah.
No, I'm just saying he's the one they would move out of Dame and CJ.
No.
If they did move,
They literally just signed. He signed with BioFreeze, and BioFreeze is now on the shoulders of Portland. Dame's a Blazer for life.
Dame's
in my
the
mind.
dude. Yeah,
So-
I think CJ's got more upside, but Dame's the dude.
Really? You think CJ has more upside?
He showed up in the playoffs.
But also,
It's
Dame's
totally
been a
recency
30-point
bias.
scorer for
Totally
the
recency
past.
bias. Dame's better. Don't get me wrong.
Okay.
But like him pooping his pants in the playoffs was just my last impression. So
Well, I think that he's going to get traded to the Clippers before the season starts. I think that Thibodeau might even get fired by that point as well.
Yep.
Because I don't know what he's doing. I don't think the owner loves this move of him coming out and saying, we're not trading him. He's like, yeah, no, we're trading him. We're
Yeah.
getting him out of here. So with this much disagreement with the players not vibing with him, if you get rid of Butler, I think you got to get rid of Thibodeau. And that's going to be a huge mess. Timberwolves are going to be a terrible situation, but I think
any
it's
head
something that
coaches
needs to
out
be
there
done.
still not signed? Any interesting names?
I
I don't know. I didn't give that
guys
forethought.
who just got fired. Vogel, but I don't know about that.
That's a bad fit.
Yeah. We can go with one of the Van Gundy's.
Hornacek.
Yeah. I don't know about that.
So maybe
Earl Thomas. Not Earl Thomas.
Earl Watson.
Earl Watson. No, Earl Watson. We got fired after 3 games. I think that's going to be Tibbs' fate. He's going to be fired after 3 games. But let us know what you think about the Jimmy Butler trade. When's it going to happen? Who's it going to happen to? What team is going to go to? What star is going to go with him? I mean, there's a lot of guys out there. KD's going to be a free agent. Kyrie's going to be a free agent. It's going to be a crazy draft class next year. Or free agent class next year. So let us know what you think about this Jimmy Butler news. What do you think about the Timberwolves? What do you think about Butler? Let us know in the comments down below.